Hello and welcome into Slick Talk. This latest episode is being recorded live on November 3rd. Ben, is there anything going on today on November 3rd?
Nothing I can think of,
No, there's nothing going on. I definitely haven't been, incessantly checking the news or anything for hours on end. Nothing like that at all. No, needless to say... This is a pretty big day, but I'm going to be happy when it's over. I'm going to be happy to be marching towards any semblance of normal. And part of normal for us on the day-to-day is obviously talking about oil, used oil analysis, but that's not the main event for today's show. Today's show is about diesel fuel because just in my goings-on, especially on social media, Ben, I will post photos of a diesel fuel sample or a gasoline sample, and anytime fuel comes up, people are taken aback usually. Like, I don't think they assume that we look at this stuff.
Yeah. I mean, I think they, you think of us, you think of oil, but you don't think of, some of the the other things that we actually wind up testing every single day here.
There's so many different applications, and people need to know serviceability, contamination, etc. But yeah, before we get into all that, just want to do a little bit of catching up because it's been a while since we first talked on here. The Cordoba episode has gained some status, and it just picked up quite a few listens. People enjoyed it, so we had to have you back on here.
Nice.
And in the time since, there's been a lot of passage of time, and people haven't gotten to know the both of us all that well. So in this game of catching up, what's been new with you? Just give the audience a little bit of the goings-on in the life of Ben.
Let's see. On a personal level, it's same super heated every day. Been going to work, going to my mixed martial arts classes, do a lot of hiking on the weekends. That's all been pretty much same old. Here at work, I've actually started branching out a little bit and have been learning how to do aircraft filter analysis. Been working with Luke on that and learning about those, and that's been a really surprisingly interesting fun new thing to add to the workday.
Yeah, getting away from the keyboard, getting away from writing reports, and just doing some hands-on stuff is a good time, and we enjoy it as analysts. I think we look forward to it, having those opportunities.
Oh, yeah.
So it's definitely fun to get a little change of pace there. I just think it's good for people to know that we're definitely not afraid to get our hands dirty. On my end of things, I had a dream last night, and this is all real. I'm not making this up for entertainment. This isn't just for pizzazz. This is real, folks, okay? I had a dream about oil, and it was kind of a harrowing episode. So I dreamed I was leaving work, and this guy in like a mechanic jumpsuit, didn't have the Michael Myers mask, but mechanic jumpsuit, he comes running up to me, empty parking lot. And I couldn't quite make out what he was saying, but he just kept saying, like, it's gone, it's gone. And I was like, what's gone? And he's like, the oil, it's gone. And he directed me over to a broken down car. And he was like, it's gone, 6 quarts. And I was like, oh no. I was like, so I think my first question was, well, what's the sump capacity? Can you drive? And he's like, no. And then so I get in the truck. I go to the nearest gas station to go get this guy some oil. And I was doing my thing. I was getting ready to go. And then, I remember buying the oil. And then I looked down and it was diesel engine oil. And I was like, oh, no. He definitely doesn't have a diesel engine. So
That car doesn't take 15W40,
no,
Joe.
No, it needs 520 conventional, baby. But anyway, so I was able to get the oil back, but the thing was the Dream, to reference Inception, the Dream collapsed when I was returning to get the oil to the guy. So I really hope that I have a follow-up to that tonight where I find out what happened and whether or not that 6 quarts made it home.
That's like the oil version of you dream that you're falling off of a cliff and you wake up just before you hit the ground. You woke up just before you put the wrong oil in somebody's engine.
Yes. I mean, who among us, But yeah, I mean, other than that, you mentioned that you were still doing some hiking. I'm pretty envious of any movement right now because post-marathon, I'm 99% sure I have a stress fracture in my foot, and it's been part of the reason I've been sidelined for a while. It's legitimately painful to walk around. I'm hoping it's just a few weeks because it's the longest I've gone without running since April. And that's I mean, that's the plight of the old men that we are, Joe. I pretty sure I fractured a toe a few months back practicing some kicks and wasn't right for about 4 months. Oh my gosh. I mean, I just want to, like so many of our customers, I want the quick fix, right? Like, I want to be able to just slap an additive in there. Just put an additive on it and it'll fix it all.
I need cam guard for my toe.
Yes. Very good joke for the aircraft community. Please shout out if you got that one. Lastly, before we get into the main event, giveaway update. So thanks to everyone who entered the Slick Talk giveaway. I have at least 4 entries on iTunes. This was an iTunes giveaway. I have 4 entries, but remember, folks, we need to be tagged in the post. So screenshot your review that you left on our iTunes, tag us, and that way we know who you are. And that way we can get you your hat and your shirt. So thanks to everyone for entering. Again, that's huge. We got a lot of 5-star ratings and reviews off of that. And that's, awesome. But please claim your review by tagging us in a post and letting us know, hey, Blackstone, that was me who left the review. And that way we can get you your prizes. So now, Ben, without further ado, we are looking at diesel fuel today. We're going to break down what we can find, what results matter. And I think you'd be good to lead us off here. Just take us through our testing.
All right. So for diesel fuel samples, those cost $43. And some of the testing that we do on those is similar to what we do for our standard oil analysis, and some of it's very, very different. We do run diesel fuel samples through the spectrometer. So we do a spec exam for that, looking for unusual elements. A big one for that is iron. And Joe, if you want to tell people maybe what iron can tell us in the spectral exam.
Yeah, so ideally you don't want to have anything more than a trace. And by trace, I'm talking about 1-2 parts per million. If you have a lot of iron in there, that might show rust, contamination. And it's just metals in general, we shouldn't find very much. It should be pretty clean.
Right. And another one, and the elements that can come up and be a big red flag in fuel samples, just like an oil silicon can show, dirt that's gotten into the fuel tank, which is, a concern for a few different reasons. Not the least of which that it can plug up and foul your fuel filter, which will just cause all kinds of problems.
Yeah, and with dirt and debris, obviously silicon's a nice little giveaway, along with, we're always going to be looking at these things visually for anything that shouldn't be there either. And then try, and if we do find solids, measure them out with the insolubles test.
Mm-hmm. Right. And moving on to that, one of the major tests that we do on diesel fuel samples is the flashpoint test, because that can show us whether that sample has been contaminated by gasoline, which is a common concern in diesel systems. Somebody isn't thinking, they just automatically pull up to the gas pump instead of the diesel pump, put some regular pump gas into a diesel tank, and that ain't good.
Yeah, people run into those mistakes. Also, people are worried about vandalism. They'll wonder if someone put gasoline in there. They'll wonder about water. And they also, when you talk about water in diesel fuel samples, kind of the next point you end up is DEF contamination, because the tanks are close together. So again, could be purely accident, could be a little bit of vandalism there. But yeah, DEF is something that people ask us about a lot too.
Yeah, DEF, and that's where for DEF, our regular testing can show us immediately, if there's water present in there, and yeah, that could be regular water, that could be DEF, but that's one of those cases too where the old school nose test is going to give you a good indication on whether or not that water is just regular water, if that's coming from DEF. Because if it's coming from DEF, you're going to get a strong ammonia smell from the sample.
Yeah, the smell test is definitely an old reliable, and I've come across a couple cases where we were even able to obtain the urea percentage, because a certain urea content is another giveaway that DEF is there. You might have some crystal-like material around the lid of the sample bottle itself. So yeah, and you come into an interesting range here where you'll have the insurance samples where these are obviously kind of, they're related to a warranty or a claim or something like that. And then we'll just have the everyday person who is, they stumbled upon maybe a fuel tank and they don't know if the fuel can be used or not. Right.
I guess that leads us into the last test that we do on that, which is a specific gravity, which, if that's off, if it's too high or too low, that's an immediate indicator for whether or not that fuel is fit for use.
Yeah, and the specific gravity, the flash point, I think one thing that can kind of trip people up, there's no, all these things matter to the point where if you have an okay specific gravity, if you have an okay flash point, but we find contamination that can overwhelm a fuel filter, or we find water, solid material, the fuel's not going to be fit for use. So I think it's kind of a interesting separation from oil samples where like folks will want to maybe extend the oil change interval. We might let them do that even if they have a couple things that don't look maybe pristine.
Right.
Maybe they have a metal that's been a bit high for a while, but we know that we're comfortable with it, so we extend the interval. So, a high level there doesn't matter, or a slightly high or low viscosity, we might let that go. But fuel is just a lot more concrete, and it's a lot more, it doesn't take much, basically. You want to have all these results look good before we tell you to use it or not.
Yeah. Fuel is very cut and dry. It is either fit for use or unfit for use, and any one thing being out of spec will instantly make it unfit for use, because that's just not something you want to mess around with.
Yeah. No, this is very easily coming down to whether or not you want that vehicle to run. And when we do get into contamination with diesel fuel, we do get into bacteria testing, because, if we find some unusual substances there, it doesn't look like dirt per se, but it's some sort of contaminant that folks will sometimes need to determine if it's bacteria related, bacterial growth. So this is an additional test. We will not automatically test for bacteria unless you ask us, and here's the reason why. It's involved. It takes much longer than just running a standard diesel fuel analysis. I want to say it's at least a day, a couple days, maybe.
I believe it's 3.
Yeah, because you need time for that stuff to work its magic. And there's 3 main things we're going to be looking for as far as results we can obtain. And we can check for yeast, mold, and anaerobic bacteria. So some of these things are going to be really important for people, especially if you're in some sort of dispute where you need to establish factually what is present in the fuel, and we can, help confirm certain contaminants. So yeah, bacteria testing, $43. Standard diesel fuel testing, $43.
Yeah, and there are so many things that we can test for in fuel, and that said, there are some things that we do get asked about. I know I have been asked about a kind of shocking amount of times is people will send in a sample and they suspect that somebody has poured sugar into their fuel tank, and they want us to test that fuel to see if there's any sugar present in there. And that, unfortunately, that's one of the things that we just can't. We don't test for contaminants like that are clear-cut cases of that sort of vandalism.
I think it might surprise people a little bit, because it's kind of like when we say that, I think people think we might not be taking a common sense approach to what we literally see, maybe what we can literally even feel if we are checking the sample closely. Like, yes, it's obviously there's something there, and maybe the likelihood is very good that it's sugar, but there's not a result as far as our analysis that screams that is sugar.
Right.
Like, yeah, it's not going to make itself readily apparent in the results we run. So, yes, it is a situation, common sense wise. Yes, do we see something that, looks like a duck, walks like a duck? That's not the same thing as having a result say this is a clear identifier of sugar.
Right.
But that's a good segue into another segment I want to start doing on a regular basis, and that's tough questions, where we kind of bring up situations where we're asked a question that just goes a little bit beyond the scope of our analysis. I think the reason this interests me is it kind of gives listeners a look into what exactly a lab is capable of and why, and what are the limitations. So that way you have a little bit more to go on, especially when you have a situation come up where you're not sure, what a lab can shed light on. So we just want to bring up some interesting ones. For me, I had a sample the other day where it was oil from an engine that was suffering from a severe coolant leak to the point where about 48% of this sample, Ben, was solid. Woo. And just to give people a little bit of frame of reference here, I mean, I'm sure most people can readily ascertain that 48% shouldn't be solid, but 0.6% is high.
Yeah.
We're talking 48 whole percent. So that's how badly the oil was oxidizing. And the thing about running a sludge sample, if we can dilute it enough to run through our machines, then we can kind of, get some insight on it. The flip side of that, though, is due to how much dilution it might take, metals can be affected. So here was a tough question. The guy, we had found a high lead level, nothing crazy. I would say it was high enough to notice. Mm-hmm. And he asked me, is bearing wear a real concern, or is it something I can just watch? Should I actually visually inspect the bearings? And I was like, well, this is a situation where we can't be sure how high this really is. It's already a bit high with dilution. It could be 4 times this amount.
Yeah.
It's hard to say. So yeah, that was something where I wanted to be as straight up as I could and be like, no, forget it. It's 12 parts per million. Just focus on getting that coolant leak addressed. But yeah, that was a question where it's not an easy way out.
Yeah. I had a sample last week very similar to that where it had multiple sources of contamination in it. The engine had both a large coolant leak to the point where we were still finding the water. It was the potassium and the sodium were all there, but then there was a whole bunch of water on top of that, and then on top of that, it had fuel contamination of I think 6% or more, and then in the spec results, high metals pretty much across the board, but with that kind of contamination, we're looking at so much dilution there that it's like, hey, this could be potentially catastrophic amount of wear in these metals, but then again, it could not. But it's hard to say because we can't get a good look due to all of that dilution from contamination in there, and that was just like a really tough one to call on because all you can really say at that point is heavy wear, lots of contamination. Let's get some repairs done and then see how it looks after that.
Yeah, I think sometimes it's just you have to rest on how that engine is running. Is it running, first of all? Mm-hmm. And if it's running okay, let's start addressing contaminants, get those out of the picture, and then kind of go from there if we can, and just get a clear picture. All right, so we're going to keep revisiting these questions, and obviously send in questions that, you might not necessarily even think they're tough questions, but you just want to know more about what we can test for, what we can find out. Send them along, and we will feature them, and, if we have an easy answer, we'd still love to bring them up. If it's one of those questions where we might have to dig a little deeper, we'll more than welcome those as well. But yeah, gliding us out, just to give listeners a little bit more about us, Ben and myself particular, we talk about music a lot because honestly, when you're writing a lot of reports like we do, you need some sort of zen, you need some sort of focus. And for us, that's definitely music. We talk about probably an album a day, a couple artists a day. So we thought it would be fun to bring up just what our album of the week is, what we've been playing a lot. Mm-hmm. And yeah, Ben, I'll let you kick us off here.
All right. Well, Joe, here lately, I've been listening to a lot of Cannibal Corpse, specifically the album Bloodthirst. It's Cannibal Corpse's album from 1999. I believe it's the third album to feature George Corpse Grinder Fisher on vocals after he replaced Chris Barnes. It's maybe not, in terms of quality, the best Cannibal Corpse album. And depending on who you are listening to this, you're like, best Cannibal Corpse album? I don't know if that exists. There might be an album that is least likely to make me want to stick a screwdriver in my ear. But hey, man, I like death metal. If you don't like death metal, sorry. But yeah, I really, just been on that album a lot lately. It's the album that I got into Cannibal Corpse on about 20 years ago. Never really cared for their early stuff. I still, if there are any Cannibal Corpse fans out there, the purists might get on me for this one, but I just have always hated and will always hate the first three albums with Chris Barnes on vocals. I hate Chris Barnes' vocals with a burning, searing passion, and 6 Feet Under is probably the worst American death metal band of the last 30 years. That said, I'll stop talking about that and just go on. I really like listening to high energy stuff like that because when you're sitting at a desk all day and you're writing reports and you are as severely ADHD as I am, Sometimes Portishead ain't gonna cut it. Sometimes sometimes Tom Waits just isn't gonna do it. Sometimes you need that Cannibal Corpse to scratch that itch and to occupy that part of your brain that is wanting to do somersaults, so that you can then sit and get your reports written. And strangely enough, I have found that on my days where I'm listening to something like Cannibal Corpse or Carcass or the Black Dahlia Murder, or something like that, my productivity actually goes way up.
I can appreciate that quite a bit. And Lord knows, I mean, you have to spice it up. You absolutely do. But with that being said, I mean, now I feel like I didn't come to the plate with some strong stuff.
Well, what do you got? What do you got, Joe?
Well, I mean, we're gonna kick it down a notch. We're gonna go to the basement, because my album of the week is the Basement Tapes.
Oh, it's so good.
Recorded by Bob Dylan and the band. I'm not talking about the 1975 release. That if you are to search Basement Tapes, that's the first thing that's going to come up. I don't really love it because that release involves a bunch of overdubs. It's not just the pure Basement Tape recordings. Let's record this stuff, and then years later, 'cause, it was recorded in 1967, I believe.
Yeah, but what a document, though. What a document of Bob Dylan and the band playing together,
Yes. It's special for any fans of the band and any fans of Bob Dylan. If you've never made that intersection where you kind of have joined the two together, because I guess it's possible. I mean, I don't know how it's possible for me, but other people, maybe you've just heard The Wait, and you've just heard, just the band's typical hits up on Cripple Creek or something,
right,
and then you've never really dived in. It's a really interesting historical document, yeah, because if you dig back to the original 1967 recordings, it's so pure. And the reason I bring it up as my album of the week is I just noticed Apple Music has the complete Basement Tapes collection now that you can listen to. So this is 139 songs. And there's a lot of good standards in there. There's a lot of good originals. You have some good covers. It's just really varied. So I would encourage people, if you enjoy lo-fi, those demo quality type recordings, and you want to get as pure as just Bob Dylan and four guys from the band hanging out in upstate New York, probably a Labrador on the floor, and a bunch of whatever they were sipping on, just hanging out in the room. And it's just that's so pure to me.
Yeah.
So it's easy to sneak, and obviously, like I said, it's 139 songs. So you can get lost in the maze, and before you know it, you've written 36 reports and it just went by.
Right.
So it's really great. I would say, if anyone has never listened to it, or they are, total novices to Bob Dylan and the band, check out I Shall Be Released, I'm Not There, and $1 Million Bash. Those are probably three of my favorites off of the Basement Tapes. So yeah, check out Cannibal Corpse.
Yeah,
check out Basement Tapes.
And specifically Cannibal Corpse, check out the albums Bloodthirst and Kill. Been really listening to Kill a whole lot the last few days too. Fantastic death metal.
Mix them together, and we're going to keep coming. We have this is only our first album of the week segment. We have very varied tastes, I would say. You won't catch us listening to the same thing every day.
No, except you will catch us talking about Bob Dylan probably at least once every day. The two of us.
It just needs to happen. There is discourse to be had.
There certainly is, and we have it.
All right, but it's been fun. So we've covered a lot today. Before I wrap things up with Ben here, just want to remind anyone who entered the Slick Talk giveaway, please screenshot, tag us with your review that you submitted so we can get those prizes out to you. If you have any questions about diesel fuel testing or any other nuggets we brought up today. You want to argue with us about music, we welcome it all, so feel free to reach out. If you have any topic suggestions as well for future episodes, just hit us up, bstone@blackstone-labs.com, or you can always call us. If you just want to talk to Ben or I about what have you, we'll be there. So thank you for listening, and thanks, Ben, for joining.
Thanks for having me back, Joe.
All right, till next time.
See ya.